Imagine sitting in an old, abandoned house, the walls peeling and floors creaking with every step. As you walk through, an unsettling silence surrounds you. But then you notice something strange, a figure sitting motionless under a tree in the yard. An elderly woman, worn and weathered, with deep, haunting eyes that seem to hold a million secrets. No one knows where she came from, or why she refuses to eat or speak to anyone. The villagers whisper rumors. She has no family, no one who cares for her. She sits silently, day after day, as if waiting for something or someone. But no one dares approach her, and those who try are met with cold silence. Until one day, an unexpected flash from the bracelet on her wrist catches your eye. You move closer, drawn to the mysterious woman, and in that moment you fall to your knees, overcome by an inexplicable rush of emotion. It feels as though this woman is more than just a stranger. Who is she? Why does she sit here alone and ignored? And what happened to bring her to this point of isolation? As you sit down beside her, eyes locked, she begins to speak. And the story she tells reveals not only the tragedy of a mother abandoned by her own children, but also the unimaginable strength and resilience it takes to endure betrayal, loss, and solitude. Her tale will pull you into a world of familial love, heartache, and the kind of cruelty only those closest to you can inflict. But as she speaks, it's not just her story that will unfold. It's a story that will force you to question the very bonds that are supposed to protect us. And it begins right here. We had just moved into an old house, and that's where I found this story, which is a true account of someone's life. I'm sharing it with you all. Let me tell you what happened. I came to this old house for some work. While I was there, I noticed an old woman sitting under a tree. She sat there in a strange way. People said that she neither eats nor talks to anyone. When she becomes extremely weak and unconscious, only then does she regain some life. I asked, how can that be? No matter what happens to a person, they do not stop eating because one cannot survive without food. They replied, but that is exactly what she does. I wasn't particularly interested in hearing her story. However, my curiosity was slightly piqued, but I didn't have much time. As I was about to leave, something suddenly flashed on my face. It was a bracelet on the woman's wrist, which seemed to be either silver or steel. The flash caught my eye, and I approached her. As I got closer, I couldn't help but fall to my knees and start crying uncontrollably. Everyone around was stunned. They whispered among themselves, "He came here as a technician, and now he's sitting next to this woman, crying like a madman." A moment ago I had said I wasn't interested in her story, but now I found myself pleading with her. "Please, tell me what happened to you. What happened, Mother?" The old woman looked at me for a moment. Someone nearby said, "She never looks at anyone, yet she's looking at you." After a brief silence, she began telling her story. She said, "I used to live in a nearby neighborhood. I had 3 sons whom I was very proud of. I used to say that no matter what happens in this world, my 3 sons would always be the light of my eyes. I hated daughters, so much so that during each of my 3 pregnancies I hoped that I would not have a daughter. When my second son was born, everyone said I should have a daughter. Even my 2 sons wanted a younger sister, but I was adamant that I didn't want a girl. To me, that was my worst nightmare. But the 3rd time, I did give birth to a daughter. I was upset. However, since she was my child, I had to raise her. Her cries gave me headaches, and I often fed her in anger. When she would cry, I would just let her cry. People say girls are strong and resilient, and she did survive. She grew to be 3 or 4 years old and began to eat on her own. Sometimes the neighbors would feed her. Other times, her father, who loved her very much, would take care of her. I gave birth to another son for the 4th time and was very happy. My daughter started growing up. She was tall and looked mature for her age, though she wasn't quite an adult yet. I decided to marry her off because my husband had passed away, and there was no one to stop me. My sons didn't have a say in the matter, and they only found out when I had already arranged the marriage ceremony and sent my daughter away. I married her to my brother-in-law, as my sister was no longer alive. I had told him, "You have 2 children to take care of." After the marriage, he moved to another city. After that, I never thought about my daughter. I didn't worry about where she was or how she was doing. I started living my life in peace. My sons had grown up. I married off my eldest son and got my second son engaged. The third one was still studying. I was very proud of my sons. My eldest son earned a good living and made lots of money. My sons were my strength. The wife of my eldest son had been living with us for about 2 or 3 months, and everything was fine at first. But gradually, her attitude started changing. She realized that my husband covered all the household expenses. I wasn't a cruel mother-in-law. I wasn't a bad woman. I just loved my children too much. I told my daughter-in-law, "Don't create fights in the house. Your husband earns money not just for you, but also for me, his mother, and his brothers. When the others finish their studies, they will get good jobs too. Don't create hatred between the brothers." We didn't have many expenses. We owned our house, so we didn't even have to pay rent. We didn't have to pay for electricity either, as my eldest son's job covered that. We could live comfortably without many costs, but my daughter-in-law, Asiya, didn't listen to me. She was starting to speak out of line. I had chosen her myself because she seemed nice in the beginning, but now she was behaving strangely. My second son was already engaged. He came to me one day and said, "I don't want to get married now. I have found a job abroad, and I want to go there." I was surprised and said, "Son, I can't live without you." He replied, "Mother, I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you, it's a great job and I have to go." When he told me his salary, I was amazed. It was even more than what my eldest son earned, but it came at the cost of living far away from him. He said, "If I earn well, there's no such thing as being far away. I'll visit often. Nowadays, there's video calling and phones. We can stay in touch easily." My son Akram, the middle one, eventually left for the foreign country. For the first 2 months, he didn't send any money, but after that, he started sending money regularly. My daughter-in-law stopped complaining, but I missed my son greatly. One day, my youngest son, Ali, came out of the storeroom holding a photograph. It was a picture of my daughter. He was too young to know when I had married her off, so he asked, "Who is this?" I told him, "She was your sister. She got married and went away." He was shocked and said, "But she looks so young." I replied, "Girls need to be married off when they mature." He asked why she never visited, or why we didn't go to meet her. I told him her name was Samira, and that she had moved abroad, which is why we couldn't meet her. My eldest son was doing well in his job, and my youngest was still pursuing his studies, working toward a good degree. Despite my efforts, I couldn't unite my 3 sons, as there was little love between them. One day, I missed a call from Akram. When I called him back, a girl answered. "Who are you?" she asked. I replied, "Who are you, and where is my son?" She called out to him in a way that only a wife would call her husband, but how could she be my son's wife? Akram had been abroad for a year. He returned once, 6 months after leaving, but it was almost time for his next visit. I wanted to ask him when he would be coming back. After a while, my son came to the phone, and we started talking. I asked, "Who was that girl I heard earlier?" he said. "Mom, I meant to tell you, but I didn't because I knew you'd be upset. I got married here, and she's going to be a mother soon." He said it so casually that I was shocked. For my eldest son's wedding, I had celebrated grandly. And I had dreams for my second son's marriage too, but he had shattered them. He not only got married, but was about to become a father without even informing us. I asked, "Why did you do this?" Instantly, he became angry. "What's the big deal, Mom? Marriage is a personal choice. I liked her, so I married her." I responded, "You could have told us. Would we have stopped you from getting married? The girl speaks Urdu, so she must be Pakistani. Why didn't you tell us? We could have arranged a wedding ourselves." But he quickly retorted, "You would have never allowed me to marry her. She's not Muslim and she's black. That's why I didn't tell you." I felt like the ground had slipped from under my feet. My son had married a non-Muslim woman and a black woman at that. I began to cry. Akram coldly said, "I don't have time for this. You can cry all you want, but she's my wife. She's about to be a mother, and we won't be traveling with a newborn right now. Maybe someday I'll bring her to meet you. She's eager to see Pakistan." And with that, he hung up. I continued to cry. My youngest son Ali heard my sobs and came running. He informed my eldest son and his wife. Soon they were sitting beside me, asking what had happened. I told them everything. My daughter-in-law, Asiya, laughed and said, "He married a black woman? I wonder how she looks. Probably pitch black. Wouldn't be noticeable in the dark." I snapped at her. "I don't care about her being black. God created everyone, and all are equal. My concern is that she's not Muslim, and he didn't even tell us. How will we explain this to our relatives? How will we explain to the family where he was engaged?" My eldest son calmly said, "What else did you expect? When you send someone abroad, this is bound to happen. Over there, no one will stop him. Just apologize to his fiancé's family." Thankfully, we only got them engaged and didn't go through with the marriage. Otherwise, we would have been in deep trouble. I didn't eat for an entire day, my heart heavy with sorrow. I kept crying, but my eldest son's words kept echoing in my mind. "What can you do?" Yes, we had to call off the engagement. When I called the girl's family, they were understandably upset. How could you break the engagement? You were the ones who arranged it in the first place. When they continued berating me, I finally told them, "How can I arrange the marriage? He has already married someone else." After that, they went silent. Asiya kept taunting what a horrible choice Akram made. He married a black woman. Just imagine what their children will look like. She continued mocking the situation, showing no compassion. The next day, Ali came to me, asking for money. I inquired, "How much do you need?" He mentioned a staggering amount, 1.5 million rupees. I was stunned. Where would I get that kind of money, and why do you need 1.5 million? I said, "Wait. I will discuss this with your elder brother." He quickly protested, "No, Mom, don't tell anyone. I just need you to arrange the money. Ask Akram to send it. The currency over there is worth so much more here, everything will be sorted." I replied, "Unless you tell me what it's for, I won't give you a single rupee." But he refused to explain. Then, the unthinkable happened. In the middle of the night, the police came banging on our door. When we delayed opening, they broke the lock and stormed inside. My eldest son woke up in a panic, asking what was happening. The police demanded, "Bring Ali out." "He's committed a grave crime. We have complaints and an arrest warrant against him." We were in shock. "What has he done?" my eldest son asked. "He's just a student." The police revealed He's involved in illegal activities amounting to 1.5 million rupees. At that moment, I understood why he had asked me for the money. The police insisted on taking him away. Chaos erupted in the house. I couldn't let them take my youngest son, whom I loved so dearly. But what could I do? I couldn't stop them. They had a warrant. They went from room to room, searching, finally heading towards Ali's room. By then, he was nowhere to be found. He had escaped through the window. The police immediately began their pursuit, believing he couldn't have gone far. Morning came, and there was still no sign of him. Later, I received a voicemail. It was from Ali. I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going, but if I stay, things will get much worse. If you want to save me, transfer 1.5 million rupees to this account, and I'll come back. I pleaded with my 2 other sons to arrange the money. Please, do whatever it takes to gather 1.5 million rupees, I begged them. But they refused. Let him face the consequences of his actions, they said. He needs to learn from this. We will not send a single rupee. My eldest son added, I'm already drowning in debt from supporting this household. Akram has his own family to care for now, and it's not easy raising a child. I sold my jewelry, but it only fetched 250,000 rupees. I sent the money to the account Ali provided, hoping he would return, but he didn't. All I heard was that he was in hiding, safe for now, but unwilling to come back until the full amount was paid. I considered selling the house, the last asset in my name. I couldn't bear the thought of being without my youngest son. Akram, living abroad, had distanced himself. My eldest son was too occupied with his own family, and without Ali I felt utterly alone. When I mentioned selling the house, my eldest son erupted in anger. You're willing to sell the house for him? Where will we live then, on rent? There's no need to sell it. Besides, how do I know you won't sell it without our consent, just like you sold your jewelry? I had raised my sons, paid for their education and taken care of their needs. Was it too much to expect that the house should be in my name? You might have heard that if a husband does not respect his wife in front of his in-laws and belittles her, the in-laws, too, will never respect that woman. Similarly, if your daughter-in-law senses that her husband doesn't value you, she will use that as an excuse to treat you poorly. And that's exactly what happened. My daughter-in-law declared, "From now on you will do all the housework. If you don't, you won't get any food. There's no need to complain to your son. He already knows, and he's the one who told me to say this because I'm expecting a child and can't do housework." When she said she was pregnant, I was happy. I approached her to kiss her forehead, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me. You might give me the evil eye," she snapped. It was such joyous news, so why wouldn't I help around the house? I wanted her to rest. However, I wasn't feeling well either. I thought, I can cook, and the maid will handle the other chores. But my daughter-in-law dismissed the maid, saying, "You will do all the housework to save on the maid's salary." This was extremely difficult for me. I went to my son and told him what she was doing. "I work all day," he said. "I come home tired and want peace. I don't come home to hear complaints from you or my wife. Women are meant to work. It will be good for you to stay active. Don't bother me with this again." The next day, my daughter-in-law fought with me for telling my son. "You will not eat today," she shouted. I was shocked. Had it come to this? I had been the lady of the house, raising my children and cooking in my kitchen. No one had ever dared to tell me I couldn't eat. Now, this day had arrived. I thought she was bluffing. I'm the one cooking, I thought. How can I not eat? But after I finished making the food, she took it and locked it in the fridge. I spent the entire day with an empty stomach. The next day, I apologized to her, although not fully. I just said I shouldn't have complained, and she handed me some bread to eat. This became a pattern. Whenever I said something that upset her, she would take away my food. Sometimes I would go hungry for 2 days at a time. She had manipulated my son so well that he didn't care anymore. "You never loved me," he would say. "You always cared more about your middle son and your youngest. You made me start working at a young age and pushed all the household responsibilities on me. Now, whether you complain to me or my wife, I don't care." I tried to contact Akram abroad. "Can't you call me there for a while?" I asked. "I want to meet your children and your wife." He replied, "I can't call you here, Mom. It will be expensive, and you won't get along with my wife. You're not the type of woman who prays 5 times a day, and you know how my wife is. I don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" I exclaimed. "I'm your mother. How could I be trouble for you?" "Not yet, but you could be," he said. "Mother-in-law and daughter-in-law relations are already tense. How do you think it will work between a devout Muslim mother-in-law and a non-Muslim daughter-in-law? You'll turn my home into a battlefield, and I don't want that. You are my heaven, but I don't want you to become my hell. You have your eldest son, the one who supported you all these years. Why do you need me?" Then he continued, "Middle children are always overlooked. They have to respect both the younger and older siblings. Nobody values us. I'm not coming back. I have my wife and kids here. Hearing this from my beloved middle son broke my heart. My eldest son had reluctantly agreed to let me stay, but the way he ordered his wife to take care of me was humiliating. There was nowhere else for me to go. I had no relatives of my own. My husband's relatives had long distanced themselves after his passing, and my youngest, Ali, whom I had poured my love and hopes into, was gone. He had only contacted me to demand money. Send the money, or I'll stay in hiding. One day, I noticed my daughter-in-law hosting some guests at the house. They were her relatives, but I had never seen them before. She claimed that one of the men was her cousin. They both went into a room and locked the door. I thought, I should make tea for them. Otherwise, she'll complain that I didn't serve her guests. I prepared tea and a few snacks. Standing outside the door, I called out, but no one answered. I knocked, but still, there was no response. Then I turned the doorknob, but it was locked from the inside. Who locks the door when a guest, especially a man, is visiting? I wondered. Even if he was her cousin, why was the door locked? I checked again. Yes, it was indeed locked. I went back and sat down in the living room. A short while later, the man left without saying a word to me. When my son came home, I confronted my daughter-in-law in front of him. "Why did you lock the door from the inside?" I asked. "What do you mean?" she snapped. "I came to serve tea, but the door was locked," I replied. "You were in there with him, and you locked the door." My son was taken aback and turned to look at Asiya, his wife. "She's lying," Asiya said. "Why would I lock the door? You know I raised Majid like a brother. He's 5 years younger than me. He was in the room for just half an hour. The door wasn't locked." "Half an hour, yes, but the door was locked," I insisted. In front of my son, she made me out to be a liar. "You're accusing my wife of wrongdoing," he yelled. "How could you think so low of her? I expected better from you, Mom. You're placing such a disgusting accusation on my wife." I tried to defend myself. I only told you what I saw. I didn't accuse her of anything. From that moment on, my son distanced himself from me completely. He wouldn't listen to a word I said. My daughter-in-law made it her mission to get back at me. She believed I had slandered her, and she wanted revenge, she continued. I was listening to the old woman's story, and tears started to well up in my eyes. I kept thinking about how she must have begged each of her sons to take her in. How much agony did she endure when she was turned away? From carrying a child in her womb to raising them, a mother's sacrifices are unmatched. She went on, I tried to adapt to my circumstances. Even though I had become old and frail, I did whatever work I could. My daughter-in-law turned my room into a storage space, filling it with household items and leaving my bed blocked and uncomfortable. I stayed silent. Soon, rats began to appear, and a foul odor filled the room. When I complained, she blamed me, saying, "Your room is dirty. That's why this is happening." My son believed her and accused me of being lazy. When he would come home and complain about the house being dirty, my daughter-in-law would say, "Tell your mother to clean it. She never cleans properly." And he would yell at me while showering her with love and bringing fruits and gifts for her. Even when I fell ill, I wasn't given medicine or care. I was expected to keep working in the house. I would often hear on TV that daughters care for their parents more than sons. But then, one day, I discovered something that completely shattered me. I learned that my youngest son had long solved his troubles by bribing the police with the money I had sent him. He had moved into a flat with his friends and had been lying to me all along. He wasn't in any danger. He was living his life. He could have taken me with him or returned home. But he chose not to. One day, I accidentally overheard a conversation when he forgot to hang up the phone. He said, "Why would I bring my mom here? I can't afford her expenses, and I have no interest in taking care of her. I'm young and want to enjoy life, not be my mother's caretaker." My hands trembled as I hung up the phone. I felt my heart break into pieces. After that, I stopped fighting for myself. I accepted my fate. My daughter-in-law kept taunting me and I let it happen. One day, while making tea, my hands were shaking, and I accidentally spilled hot tea on her. She screamed, exaggeratedly, and then blamed me, saying I did it on purpose. She grabbed my arm, dragged me to the smelly, rat-infested storage room, and locked me inside. "If you utter a word, I will poison your son," she threatened. I was terrified and too weak to fight back. I begged her not to do this, but she wouldn't listen. Later, she told my son, "I've been looking for your mother all day, but she seems to have run away." My son didn't bother searching for me. I spent 2 weeks locked in that room. She would throw in leftover food occasionally and sneer, "This is your punishment for making my life miserable." Then, one day, she accidentally left the door unlocked. I took my chance and fled the house. Imagine a young girl running away from home. She might have many reasons. But how could an old woman like me run away? That first night out of the house was terrifying. After that, I wandered. Sometimes I sat in parks. Sometimes in the women's section of mosques. Sometimes in random neighborhoods begging to survive. I spent 3 months like this. Imagine the pain of a mother with 3 sons living in such conditions. One day, 2 women found me. I was in terrible shape, so they brought me here to this old house. I've been here ever since. I don't have much strength left in me. As she finished her story, I noticed that others had gathered to listen. They were crying too. I wiped my tears and said to the old woman, "Come with me." "How can I go with you?" "Who are you?" she asked. "I am the husband of your daughter," I replied. "You sent your daughter away with an old man who treated her like a servant. He was my uncle. He was cruel to her, and she suffered greatly for many years. But then I took her hand, and luck smiled upon her. I found a good job, and we now have a home and a child of our own. I've often heard your and your son's names from my wife's lips. I am Samira's husband, Adil." She was shocked and hugged me, crying uncontrollably. I asked her to forgive me. She replied, "There's no need to apologize. Let's forget what happened." After that, she moved in with us, her daughter. We lived happily together. By the grace of God, things began to turn around. I saw true happiness on her face, although it came after much suffering. One day, I asked Samira, "Have you truly forgiven your mother? Do you not feel that she treated you terribly?" She replied, "Yes, what happened was wrong, but it happened to her too. God has already punished her, and she has realized her mistakes. I cannot punish her any further. Time itself has done that. What can a child do to their parents? A mother will always be a mother." She continued, "I remember every little thing that happened to me. Yes, I was treated badly, but I have forgiven. To truly forgive means never bringing up that matter again." And she has stayed true to her words. Since then, our home has been blessed, and our lives have improved. I now understand that good things happen to good people. By the grace of God, everything is perfect. We are together and very happy. As the story comes to a close, you're left with a haunting reminder of the sacrifices a mother makes and the heartache that can follow. The woman, once broken and abandoned, found a sliver of hope in her daughter's kindness. Samira's choice to forgive rather than harbor resentment teaches us a powerful lesson about love, compassion, and the strength of family bonds. Now, the old mother lives surrounded by the warmth of her daughter's love, finding comfort in knowing that despite everything, she is not alone. The trials she faced, the betrayal of her sons, the bitterness of her daughter-in-law, the long nights of begging on the streets, are scars that will never fade. Yet, it is through these scars that she learns the true meaning of resilience and forgiveness. Life, in its strange way, has brought her back to the place where she belongs. Samira's willingness to let go of the past and welcome her mother into her life opened a door to healing for both of them. As they now sit together, enjoying the peace they had long been denied, the mother knows that her story could have ended differently. It could have ended in bitterness, in loneliness, or in regret, but instead it ends in love. And as we reflect on this journey, it's a reminder for all of us to cherish our bonds, to seek forgiveness, and to embrace love even when it seems impossible. If you found this story moving and thought-provoking, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this one to life. Let's spread the message of hope and resilience together.